The day I came home from the military hospital, I thought I was returning to the only place where I was supposed to feel safe. Instead, I found divorce papers sitting on my kitchen table, my house emptied, and the man who promised to stand beside me already gone. My husband had taken everything and started a new life with another woman while I was still learning how to walk again. For years, I thought he had destroyed my future. But 17 years later, one simple Google search by his new wife uncovered the truth he had buried, and within 24 hours, my phone would show 120 missed calls. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed I knew exactly what strength looked like. I thought strength was wearing a uniform, standing through impossible situations, and continuing forward even when every part of you wanted to stop. I served in the military for years, and I was proud of the life I built. I wasn't just a soldier. I was a daughter, a friend, and a wife who believed I had found my forever person. My husband, Daniel, was the man I thought would stand beside me through every storm. We had built a home together, made plans for the future, and promised each other that no matter what happened, we would never walk away. But sometimes, the hardest battles are not the ones you face on a battlefield. They are the ones that happen when you are vulnerable and the person beside you chooses to leave. The moment everything changed was during a military operation that ended with me seriously injured. I remember waking up in the hospital, surrounded by machines, doctors, and unfamiliar faces. The first thing I asked was where Daniel was. I thought he would be there. I thought he would hold my hand and remind me that everything would be okay. And for a while, I convinced myself that even though my body had changed, my life would eventually return to normal. But I had no idea that while I was learning how to stand again, the person I trusted most was already walking away. I thought coming home would be the beginning of my recovery. I had no idea it would be the moment my entire world would collapse. When I finally left the hospital, I thought the hardest part was behind me. I had spent weeks fighting through pain, therapy sessions, and the frustration of having to relearn things I once did without thinking. Simple movements became challenges. Walking across a room felt like a victory. Getting dressed without help felt like an achievement. But I kept telling myself one thing. I was going home. I was going back to the place where I was loved. At least that was what I believed. The moment I opened the front door, I knew something was wrong. The house was silent. Not peaceful silent. Empty silent. The pictures that once covered the walls were gone. The shelves that held our memories were almost completely bare. The furniture in the living room looked different because half of it was missing. For a few seconds, I just stood there holding my bag, trying to convince myself there had to be an explanation. Then I saw it. A stack of papers sitting on the kitchen table. My hands started shaking before I even picked them up. Divorce papers. I remember staring at those pages, trying to understand how the person who promised to protect me could leave me while I was still recovering from my injuries. Daniel was not waiting for me. He was not coming back. He had already made his decision. I called him again and again, but every call went unanswered. Messages stayed unread. The man who once said he could never imagine life without me had disappeared like our entire marriage meant nothing. Then I discovered the truth. He had not just left. He had moved on. While I was fighting to walk again, he had started a new life with another woman. He sold our house, took what he could, and walked away before I even had the chance to ask why. That was the moment I realized my biggest battle was no longer recovering from my injury. It was surviving the betrayal of the person I trusted most. For a long time, I believed Daniel had taken everything from me. He took my home. He took the future I thought we would have. He took the person I believed would stand beside me when life became difficult. But what he did not realize was that he never took the one thing that mattered most: my ability to rebuild. The first few months after everything happened were the hardest. I was still recovering physically, and there were days when I hated needing help for things I used to do easily. I had to learn patience with my own body and accept that healing was not going to happen overnight. But every small victory reminded me that I was still here. The first time I walked across my apartment without assistance, I cried. Not because it was easy, but because I realized I had survived something I once thought would break me. I stopped waiting for Daniel to explain himself. I stopped checking my phone hoping he would finally apologize. I understood that the closure I wanted was never going to come from the person who caused the pain. So I created my own. I focused on my recovery, my career, and building a life that belonged only to me. I surrounded myself with people who saw me as more than my injury. People who respected my strength instead of using my struggles against me. Slowly, I became someone I barely recognized. The woman who once came home broken and abandoned was becoming someone stronger, wiser, and more independent than she had ever been. Daniel thought leaving me would end my story. He had no idea it was the beginning of a life he would never be part of again. For 17 years, I built a life that had nothing to do with Daniel. I stopped wondering what he was doing. I stopped asking whether he ever regretted what happened. Eventually, his name became nothing more than a memory from a chapter one had already closed. I had a peaceful life now. I had a career I was proud of, friends who supported me, and a home where I finally felt safe. I learned that happiness was not about proving something to the person who hurt you. It was about waking up one day and realizing they no longer had control over your emotions. I thought Daniel was permanently behind me, until one ordinary morning changed everything. I was sitting at my kitchen table when my phone started buzzing repeatedly. At first, I ignored it. I assumed it was another work call or a number I didn't recognize. Then I saw the message. It was from someone I had never heard from before. A woman named Rachel. She said she needed to talk to me about Daniel. My first reaction was confusion. Then my stomach tightened. There are some names that can instantly bring back feelings you thought were gone forever. Daniel was one of them. I almost deleted the message. Almost. But something made me stop. Rachel explained that she had recently searched my name online because she wanted to understand more about Daniel's past. She thought she knew everything about the man she married. She was wrong. She found something that changed the way she saw him completely. Old records. Details he had hidden. A version of the story that was completely different from what he had told her. And suddenly, the woman who replaced me was searching for the truth I had spent years trying to forget. Then my phone rang. It was Rachel. And the first thing she said was something I never expected to hear. "Emily, I think he lied to both of us." For a few seconds, I couldn't respond. Hearing those words from Rachel felt impossible. I think he lied to both of us. After everything I had been through, I never imagined the person who would finally uncover the truth would be the woman Daniel built his new life with. Rachel told me she had started noticing small things that never made sense. Stories Daniel told about his past always changed depending on who was listening. He described our divorce as if I was the person who walked away. He told people I had become impossible to live with after my injury, that he had no choice but to leave. But Rachel found documents that told a completely different story. She discovered that Daniel had filed for divorce while I was still recovering. She learned that he had already made financial decisions without telling me. She found messages showing that he had been planning his new life before he officially ended our marriage. The truth was finally coming out. Rachel said the hardest part was realizing she had fallen in love with someone who had built their relationship on a lie. "I thought you were the reason he left," she said quietly. "But now I realize you were the person he abandoned." I didn't know how to feel. Part of me felt a strange sense of validation. After years of wondering if people believed his version of events, someone else finally saw what I had lived through. But another part of me felt sadness. Because the truth was, I never wanted revenge. I never wanted Daniel to suffer. I just wanted him to understand the damage he caused. Rachel apologized for contacting me so suddenly, but she said she needed answers. She needed to know who she had really married. And as I looked at my phone filled with missed calls from Daniel, I realized something. The man who once walked away, without looking back, was now desperately trying to reach me. After Rachel learned the truth, everything started changing faster than I expected. For years, Daniel had been able to control the story. He told people whatever version made him look like the victim. He convinced others that leaving me was something he had to do, not something he chose. But once the facts came out, that story started falling apart. People who had only heard his side began asking questions. Friends who once believed him started seeing the missing pieces. The image he had carefully created for himself was slowly disappearing. Then Daniel started calling me. At first, I ignored every call. Not because I was angry, because I finally understood that I didn't need anything from him anymore. For years, I had waited for him to admit what he did. I wanted him to say he was wrong. I wanted him to understand how alone I felt when I needed him the most. But when the moment finally came, I realized something important. An apology from him would not erase those years. It would not undo the pain. It would not give me back the person I was before everything happened. Eventually, I answered one of his calls. His voice sounded different, less confident, less certain. He told me he was sorry. He said he made mistakes and wished he could change the past. I listened quietly, because the old Emily would have needed those words. But the woman I had become did not. I learned that forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean allowing someone who hurt you to return to your life. Sometimes forgiveness is simply accepting that what happened changed you, but it does not control you anymore. And for the first time in 17 years, I felt completely free. Looking back now, I realized Daniel thought he was destroying my life when he walked away. He believed that by taking my home, my security, and the future I imagined, he was leaving me with nothing. But he was wrong. Because sometimes losing everything forces you to discover the parts of yourself you never knew existed. The woman Daniel abandoned was scared, hurt, and unsure of how she would survive. But the woman standing here today is someone who learned her own worth. Someone who understands that being betrayed does not mean you are broken. For years, I thought my injury was the hardest thing I would ever face. I was wrong. The hardest part was accepting that the person I trusted most was capable of leaving when I needed him the most. But that pain also taught me something. Real love is not proven during the easy moments. It is proven when life becomes difficult. It is shown by the people who stay when things are messy, painful, and uncertain. Daniel walked away because he thought my struggles made me less valuable. But my struggles became the reason I discovered my strength. Today, I don't look back with anger. I look back with gratitude. Not because of what he did, but because of what I became after it. Sometimes people leave your life believing they have destroyed you. But sometimes their goodbye becomes the beginning of the strongest version of yourself.